Hi, I'm Christy. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm here with my November end of month reading wrap up. So I ended up reading 42 books for the month of November. I have my wrap-ups in two parts. So I already did my mid-month wrap-up where I talked about the 22 books I read for the first half of the month. You can see that video on my channel as well. I'll link it in the description of the video too. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the 20 books that I read for the last half of the month. As always, if you ever want to see more of my thoughts or my full reviews on any of the books that I talk about, any of the books I'm talking about in this video, I do review every book that I read, and you can always get to my reviews on my Goodreads, which is always linked in the description of all of my videos as well. I also always do link the books that I talk about in the descriptions of all of my videos. So if you ever miss any of the books, the authors, any of those things that I talked about in that video, you can go check it out there as well. So with all of that out of the way, let's get into the 20 books that I read for the last half of November. So the first book I have to talk about is The House on Biscayne Bay by Chanel Clayton. This is the last historical fiction book that I had to read from this author, which I actually do have a whole author guide coming to my channel as well. I think it's coming next week. I pre-filmed a lot of stuff, and I think it's next week that it will be live on my channel. But basically where I'm going to talk about all of her historical fiction books because I've binged them all. So this one I really enjoyed, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. This one is definitely more historical fiction with mystery. The author kind of described it as like a Clue type setting, which is one of my favorite board games of all time. So anything kind of like centered around a house as well, I just really love those. So this one really worked for me. We have some murder mysteries happening, and we're following 2 different timelines. So we have one set in the 1910s when this gorgeous like a Gothic estate mansion is being built on Biscayne Bay. And then we also jump to the 1940s as well when a new family is living in the house and things are happening. And so it kind of goes from there. There's murder mysteries in both timelines, and I just loved seeing how these characters and the house and everything just connected so well. So yeah, 4 stars for this one for me. If you love like a more mystery Gothic element to your historical fictions, highly recommend this one. Next up, I read Hexed by Emily McIntyre. So this is book 6 in her Never After series, and I really enjoyed this one. This is a very thick book, which I didn't realize until I got the physical copy of this one. So this one I enjoyed. I give it 4 stars. I have loved this entire series so much. These are all true standalones, so they don't connect at all, and you can read them in any order. I just personally love to read series in order, so that's why I do it, but you can totally read this series any way you want. All of these books in this series, they're basically like fairy tale retellings or darker reimaginings of fairy tales where the villains get their HEA, and so most of them are set in like contemporary times. This one has like a Mafia element to it, which I really loved. They are definitely darker romances, so just know that going in. This one in particular is like a take on The Little Mermaid with, like I said, the villain getting their HEA, which I love to see. And this one we have a forbidden element. The hero in this one is engaged to the heroine's cousin when the story starts, and like I said, it has a Mafia element. It's so good. I love how Emily McIntyre writes heroines who are strong and vicious and violent, and this heroine is definitely that. So yeah, one of my favorites in the series. I really enjoyed this one, 4 stars. Next up is Once Upon a Christmas Tree by Lulu Moore. This one is a new holiday, kind of longer novella. It's like 220-ish pages from her. It's a prequel. It's a start to a new series that she has coming next year, and this one I gave 3 stars to. So this one is a holiday romance, and I just kind of jumped into it. I've read quite a few books from Lulu Moore, and so I always just kind of have a good time with her books, and that was kind of the case with this one. It was fine. It was fun. It just wasn't everything I ever wanted in a holiday read. This one does end as well. I'm like kind of a happily for now type of situation. I saw she was having to post that after the fact that the book came out because people were like, what was that ending? And so it's a prequel to a start of a new series for her that's coming next year. And so I'm assuming the couple from this book, we're going to see them again there possibly, but also we get like a snippet of the next book in the series, and it's following one of the other brothers in this series. So I don't know what's going to happen, but yeah, this one was 3 stars for me. It was just okay-ish. Honestly, I wouldn't recommend it if you have like a limited amount of time and you're trying to get to some holiday romances this month, this year. This one wouldn't be one that I would like recommend personally. Basically in here we're following these kind of like billionaire aristocrat type brothers who are from England, and they decide to come to the US for the holidays and get away from their family for the season. The hero in here has like a backstory of some loss that he had around the holidays, and so the holidays are really hard for him. And so in here they end up going to, I want to say Colorado, and they end up staying there, and then he ends up meeting the heroine, and they have kind of like a little vacation fling type connection. This one, like I said, we have a lot of like holiday kind of shenanigans and all of those usual antics. This one just personally wasn't a holiday favorite for me. Like, it was okay. I've just read a ton more that I would recommend over this one. So there is that. It's kind of a longer novella as well. I do think the audiobook though, I believe it was on Hoopla, so definitely check your library sources if you can. So yeah, it was 3 stars. It was fine. Next, I jumped into The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop, which came at the perfect time. I was waiting for the audiobook for this one for a while, and I'm actually in the middle / towards the end of my Gilmore Girls rewatch, which I love that show so much. So this one kind of came at the perfect time that I'm already like fully engrossed in my rewatch of the TV series, and then being able to read Kelly Bishop's nonfiction memoir. So I really enjoyed this one. I always feel kind of weird about like rating nonfiction people's memoirs of them telling you their life stories, because it's like, what am I judging? The writing? Am I judging the story? Like, which doesn't that kind of go into judging their life, and like their life wasn't interesting, so like would that affect the story, the plot? I don't know. So anyways, I feel weird about rating nonfiction or memoirs, so I don't usually. So I actually didn't put a star rating for this one, but I did review it on Goodreads. It was entertaining. I really like that the author, she narrates her life story. She narrates the audiobook, which I always love that when authors can do that for their own books, because you can get to see their life in their words. This one would basically follow her entire life, her childhood, her family, relationships growing up, her very close relationship with her mother. We see her getting her start in her dance career and being in the original Broadway cast for A Chorus Line. We see her making the film of Dirty Dancing. We see her eventually getting into Gilmore Girls, and just kind of her entire life, love, relationships in between there, and just her whole like life. I love seeing her thoughts and her progressiveness as a person. I also liked seeing her just kind of her dance career over the years. So yeah, I did enjoy this one. So yeah, the third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. Next up, I read How My Neighbor Stole Christmas by Megan Quinn. I actually really love this one. I gave it 4/4.5 stars. I actually had such a good time with this one, and I kind of went in with lower expectations. Megan Quinn and I don't always connect. Like, some of her books are definitely more rom-com, which this one does lean into that kind of rom-com level of humor, but I feel like it really works for a Christmas romance as well as for the characters' stories. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and it was just so delightful and good, and I definitely recommend the audiobook as well. So this one is set in a small, very much like Christmassy town. It has friends turned enemies to lovers, which is one of my favorite tropes. There's a little bit of fake dating in here and just like so much more. I really love this one. Basically in here, the heroine, she ends up moving back to this small town to move in with her aunt and kind of help take care of her, and the hero lives next door to her aunt, and so he has known her throughout the years when she would come and visit her aunt there, and so he's always kind of crushed on her, but he's also very like grumpy, and so it was just so much fun seeing them together. I actually really liked the character depth, the emotional depth for the characters in here, especially the hero. He has quite a tragic backstory, and it was just very like heartfelt, and I loved that emotional element to the story, because this is definitely a longer read for a Christmas romance, and so I feel like that emotional depth to the characters, especially to him, was just so needed and like so good to the story overall. This one as well, I just loved the very much like Christmassy town, and at the beginning of each chapter, there's very much these like kind of like Dr. Seuss like poems or limericks, and they're just hilarious in audiobook form, just so much fun, and I loved the kind of like breaking of the fourth wall that the narrator / the person like reading the little poems of the story at the beginning of each chapter, like how they would kind of break the fourth wall and talk to the characters sometimes and call them out, and it was just so much fun. I highly recommend this one. This is actually one that I do recommend picking up this holiday season. I loved it so much. So yeah, 4.5 stars for this one. Next up, I had an audiobook ALC of From Air by Julie Ann. This one is actually out now, and this one, it was just okay for me. I gave it 3 stars. This one is a grumpy sunshine, enemies to lovers, found family. There's forced proximity. They become roommates. There's age gap in here. In this one, the heroine is a traveling nurse, and she ends up getting a job in Montana, and so she ends up moving in with, I think, 3 other people, one of which is the hero, and he is this grumpy smoke jumper / fireman, and so it becomes their kind of relationship. I just personally wasn't super pulled into this one. I feel like it was a story I've read lots of times over the years. I felt like it was very 2010s era, 2015 era, I feel like, of romances, which I guess if you read it, maybe you'll know what I mean as well. Like, it just felt of a different time, we'll say. So like, it was just okay. 3 stars for me. I feel like Julie Ann and I, we are hit and miss a lot. And this one was kind of one I wouldn't personally love, but I know a ton of friends who loved it. I know people who this was like their favorite read of the month. So I love that for them. It just didn't work for me. I probably won't continue on because I think it's going to be a duet. This one is available on Kindle Unlimited with the read and listen feature because it is published with Amazon's Montlake. So I guess if you want to give it a try, the audiobook, you can grab it if you grab it on KU. So yeah, 3 stars for me. Next, I also had an audio ALC of The Mirror from Nora Roberts. This one is out now, and I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. This one is a follow-up. It's the sequel to her Inheritance book, which I read the previous month and really loved that one as well. That one is very much like spooky, atmospheric, brides and ghosts, and like learning about family history and family secrets. I really loved that one, and so this is the follow-up to that. Inheritance did leave off in a cliffhanger, and so The Mirror picks up kind of right where that left off. And I can't say too much because it's a continuation of the story, and I just had a good time with this one. I think I loved Inheritance a little bit more, more, but I did love learning a lot more about the brides and the family past and the secrets and kind of all of those things that we get more of in this book, and just kind of those like slice of life moments with the characters a little bit more. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one at 4 stars, and I'm excited to see the third book in this trilogy that I think is coming out next year. Next, I decided to read another holiday novella. So this is Merry Christmas by Piper Rain. This is an author duo that I've read quite a few books from, and so some of them are more hit and miss for me. And so this one was pretty fun, and I gave it 3.5 stars. This is a holiday romance novella. It has a little bit of a second chance. It has forced proximity. They have to end up sharing a villa together when they're on vacation. And so it kind of goes from there. We see in the past how the hero and the heroine, they had this amazing weekend together in London, like I want to say 5-6 years ago. And so they had a great weekend together, and they kind of went their separate ways. And then the following Monday, the heroine ends up going into her college, which she is in like a study abroad type of program in London. And she ends up seeing the hero there. And so she's super excited. And then they both realize that he's the TA of the class. And so he kind of pushes back from her. And so they had a little falling out, and it kind of picks up. Like I said, 6 years later, they end up both being in the same town, going for the same job, and then they end up on this same kind of like a group holiday vacation together, and they have to share a villa together, and it kind of goes from there. This one was just a fun time, forced proximity. We get a lot of like holiday competitions and some family time as well. I liked how the characters in here felt very well developed for being a novella. I also liked seeing the side characters as well. They very much felt like they have novellas in the series as well, because they felt just like well fleshed out. So yeah, 3.5, 4 stars for this one. The whole series, I think there's 3 books in the series so far, and they're all on Hoopla, so on your library sources, maybe check there. I had a good enough time with this one. All right, so then I decided to switch up genres for a bit, and I jumped into this kind of like nonfiction, true crime type mystery book, I guess you could say. So this one is There Is No Ethan by Anna Ekbari, and this one was such a wild, entertaining time. Like, I grabbed the audiobook from my library. Actually, my friend Cheryl from Instagram recommended this one to me, and she was like, this was wild and I need somebody to talk about it, so please read it. And so I got the audiobook from my library, and like I said, it's just a wild, entertaining time that just like captures your attention immediately. Basically it has to do with like digital deception and catfishing and a like true story that actually happened to multiple women. And so it was interesting. I did enjoy this one. So yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. Next, I jumped into Undercurrents by Nora Roberts. So this one was actually a pick for Jess from Peace Love Books. I'm on her Patreon, and she has been doing a Nora Roberts book a month over there, which I have just really enjoyed because it's helped me get to so many Nora Roberts books that I've always wanted to kind of get into her backlist, but I had no idea where to start. So this was like the perfect thing because it tells me exactly which book to read every month. And this one I really enjoyed. I gave it 4.5 stars. This one was just so good, so emotional, so many feelings within the first 25% of the book. I was just so captivated by the audiobook. I will say I didn't read the synopsis for this one before going in, but I did after the fact, and it kind of doesn't really tell you what exactly is going on in the story. So if you need content warnings, definitely check it out for this one because it's very heavy on the violence and domestic abuse, child abuse, kind of all of those things. So just know that going in with this one. This one though I love. We kind of get told in this past and then current day as well. And so we get to see these characters for a lot of their lives and a lot of like very pivotal moments of their lives. Just highly recommend this one. It was so good, especially if you enjoy romantic suspense. I will say that a lot of the twists and kind of the turns that came in the latter half of the story, they were kind of easy to see coming, but it didn't take away from the enjoyment at all. I really enjoyed this one. Definitely one of my favorites from Nora Roberts. So yeah, 4.5 stars. Next up, I read By December Darling by Lauren Asher. So this is her new holiday romance novella that just came out this year. And this one I really enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars. This one I know is available, the audiobook, like on Hoopla. So definitely check there with like your library resources if you can, because I have seen it was on my Hoopla, and I think I know a lot of people's who it was on theirs as well. So definitely check there. This one was a lot of fun. First of all, the cover is so stinking cute, and the back as well. The interior, we get just like some really cute, like the presents and the Christmas tree. I just love like interior formatting that has really cute, like the cute little like candy canes and all of that. It's just so cute. This one is a small town. It has a workplace and kind of that forced proximity from that. The heroine here is a doctor and the heroine is a traveling nurse, which I feel like is very common for heroines lately in romances. I've read a ton where they're traveling nurses. So yeah, they work together and they're kind of thrown into a lot of situations together as well, because her sister is marrying the hero's best friend, and that best friend happens to be the heroine's ex-boyfriend. So her sister's marrying her ex, who is the best friend of the hero. So it's not as weird as it sounds, and it doesn't really play into the story too much. And so that's kind of how they're in one another's lives, as well as the workplace connection as well, which I've read the majority, I think, of Lauren Asher's books in the past. And so I wasn't really sure where these characters existed, if this small town existed in any of her other series. So I will say, and she says, I kind of think at the beginning of the story that the characters in here are completely new to the Lauren Asher universe world. So you could totally jump into this one and not worry about if there's any like connections to any of her other books. This one was just cute and fun. I liked how it first course, the hero and the heroine, they didn't really get along, but the more time that they spend together, the more time they work together, they realize that they have things in common and they kind of become friends. They do Lego sets together, which was so much fun, and they just spend a lot of time together as well. I also liked seeing here the heroine and kind of her trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life. Like I mentioned at the beginning, she's a traveling nurse, but she's kind of at that point in her life where she's trying to figure out if she wants to continue doing that, if she wants to stay where she's at currently, because it's also her hometown. And so she's kind of liking being around her family more. And so it kind of goes from there, and it was really cute and fun. Like I said, the audio especially was a lot of fun. So yeah, 4 stars for this one. Next up, I read Bittersweet Love by QB Tyler. So this one was actually the very last QB Tyler book that I had to read. So I'm caught up on her entire backlist. It just so happened that this one, the audiobook, was recently released and the ebook got a new cover, and the book itself had like some more additions added to it and kind of edited a bit. And so it was a really fun one. I gave this one 4 stars. I had the audio ALC of this one to listen to, and like I said, it is out now and it has the new cover that's up on Amazon and kind of all of those things as well. I did enjoy this one. This one, if you're not familiar with QB's books, they're always just like a spicy, entertaining time. And this one was definitely that. It's a spicy novella. We have kind of a frenemies with benefits situation. It's an office workplace setup. It's a novella, so it's very short and just kind of straight to the point. So, I mean, it was fun for what it was. Lots of like arguments and witty back and forth kind of banter between these two, especially at the office place. I really enjoyed this one. I feel like QB Tyler usually does more taboo, and this one was not taboo at all. So if you want to jump into one of hers and give it a try that's not maybe taboo, definitely check this one out. I enjoyed it for what it was, 4 stars. All right, next I jumped back into historical fiction. So I read All We Were Promised by Ashton Lattimore. This is a debut author, I believe, and their first historical fiction book. So this one I kind of have a mixed feelings about. I enjoyed enough of it, so I gave it 3.5/4 stars. I rounded up because I enjoyed it. It's a debut. Sometimes it was a little long there in the middle, so I feel like her writing could maybe be tightened up a bit, but for what it was, I did enjoy it. I thought it was a really interesting one, not one of my favorite like historical fictions, but it was good at the same time. So yeah, 3.5/4 stars. So this is a historical fiction that takes place in Philadelphia in pre-Civil War. So it's 1837, and we're kind of following these 3 different women and their stories in Philadelphia at the time. So the author in this one had a really good author's note at the end of the book, which I'm a sucker for an author's note. I love them so much, especially historical fiction books. Like I love to read and to learn, and so I feel like I just learn so much and can glean so much information from their author's notes usually. So in this one, the author talks about how she wanted to showcase this kind of overlooked time period of history in the US and Philadelphia in particular. And the author kind of wanted to tell a story, shine a light on these often overlooked Black men and women who were helping shape Philadelphia and the abolitionist movement that was happening in pre-Civil War America. So like I said, in this one, we follow 3 different women and their kind of struggles and journeys throughout the story. One of the characters in here, which was the most interesting to me, we're following her. She was formerly enslaved, and her father and her ended up becoming runaways and taken off to Philadelphia, and her father has been living as a passing white man, and so it kind of, her story was really interesting. The other woman that I really enjoyed her storyline was we're basically following her, and she kind of has this very much like affluent kind of like society type life. She was born into a free family in Philadelphia. She's lived in the city her whole life, and she has a very much privileged life compared to some of the other people around her. She's super active in a lot of like society kind of functions and stuff. So like one of the ones she participates in is the Women's Anti-Slavery Society. So it was a super interesting time reading about Philadelphia during this pre-Civil War time that I don't usually pick up a lot of historical fiction books for, and so I enjoyed that aspect to it and kind of seeing everything that was happening maybe behind the scenes of stories that aren't told, or like I said, the light's not shined on those stories as much, of this like self-proclaimed cradle of liberty city. And so it was super interesting. Like I said, the story, the history, the time period was really interesting to me. So I did enjoy this one. I love the history and the kind of conversations that it created, like in my real life that I was talking about and things I was looking up, and I just, yeah, I enjoyed it. The writing just wasn't everything for me. So I would definitely recommend it. It just wasn't one of my all-time favorite historical fiction books, if that makes sense. So yeah, 3.5/4 stars. Next up, I read The Highland Lodge Getaway by Julie Shackman. I had higher hopes for this one, and it was unfortunately disappointing. I gave it 2 stars. This one, it has another name as well, which is also The Christmas Highland Lodge. It has both names and titles and covers on Goodreads, so I'm kind of confused by which is which. And anyways, this one I grabbed from the library. It was actually on my TBR from last Christmas, and so I finally got to it this year. I kind of wanted a little bit more from this one. So I was expecting this one to be like very cute and fun, Scottish Highlands, Christmas time, like it sounded like everything I ever wanted, but it was just such a bore, just very much like repetitiveness with the heroine's inner thoughts, and I just didn't care. So yeah, 2 stars, wouldn't recommend. All right, and then I jumped into another 2 stars. So this is Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feedy. This one is actually, I think it comes out in January, I want to say. I had an audio ALC of this one, and I did not like this one. So this author is hit and miss for me. I've read the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 books, I would say, from her that she's published. And there are some that I enjoyed, which was His and Hers and Daisy Darker. I love those two. All the rest are kind of like in the mid range for me, and this one's definitely going to be at the bottom of the pile. Like I said, I gave it 2 stars. I will say the audiobook narration and production is fantastic. So if you are going to read it, I would definitely recommend picking up the audiobook. I love the like sound effects and kind of like the graphic audio of it all that they really give to her audiobooks in particular. The actual though, like story, plot, characters were just such a mess for me. It kind of started off interesting and then it really quickly fizzled out and was just such a mess. There were definitely twists in this one, which I think I saw something like proclaiming this author is like super good at twists, which I mean, okay, I guess that's kind of common with thrillers nowadays. So I don't know, it was just so disappointing, and like some of the twists and things that happened, like sure they were there, but when they were revealed, it felt so far-fetched, so out of like left field, so like fantasy that I just was, I don't know, I just was not a fan. Didn't enjoy this one. I wouldn't recommend picking it up from this author. If you're gonna pick up books from her, this isn't one I would recommend people to start with. So I don't know, 2 stars. Oh, which I didn't even tell you what this book is about. So basically in here we're following the main character, and we see him on the night that he finds out he's becoming a New York best-selling author, and he is on the phone with his wife and kind of telling her the news, and they're talking and chatting, and then something happens to his wife while he's on the phone with her, and she ends up going missing. So then we cut to a year later, his wife is still missing, and then his literary agent ends up reaching out to him and is like, hey, I want to have you go and stay at this like secret isle, this like little cottage I have there. This house is available. You can go and stay there and work and focus on your craft and write and do all the things. And so he does that. And so he goes to this kind of like secret island he never knew existed, and then some weird things start happening, and it kind of goes from there. And I just didn't like anything about this book. Didn't like the characters, didn't like the setting. So I'd be curious to hear what some other friends think about this one when it comes out. I did see some other early reviews as well after I finished it, and they're very mixed reviews as well. So I don't know, if somebody was asking me where to start with this author, this is not one I would personally recommend. So yeah, 2 stars. All right, so then I jump back into historical fiction. So this is The Lies We Leave Behind by Noelle Salazar. This is her newest November release, and I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. This is my second book I've read from this author, and this one is definitely my favorite of the ones I've read so far. So I'm a co-host for the Leave It to the Pros book club, which is a historical fiction book club that I run with Tori from Novel Life. And so this was our November pick, and so we decided to jump into it. And yeah, I enjoyed this one. I give it 4 stars. I will say the beginning half of it is pretty slow, and it's just kind of like I was enjoying it enough, but I thought it was going to be more of like a 3.5 star read. And then the second half happens, and the story just kind of jumps from there and really takes off, and it kind of changes everything. And I loved it so much. If the first half was more like the last half, it probably would have been 5 stars, but since it wasn't, and the first half was so slow, it was 4 stars for me, but such a solid historical fiction. So we start off with this character in kind of more current day time for the story, and he is at his house with his granddaughter and his daughter. So someone comes to his house and is like, hey, do you know this woman from your past? So it kind of goes back into time, and we follow the woman that he was asked about. And so we go back to 1943, World War II, and we are following the heroine, who is a nurse at the time, and kind of her journey through World War II and her personal life and family life and kind of all of these things. Like I said, there are a lot of like twists and things that happen in the second half of the story, and it was just really entertaining. And like the second half of the story, when I was describing it to my husband, it actually made me start to tear up, because I was like, oh my god, this book was so emotional, and like the things that happen, and when you're saying it out loud, it's just like, ugh, it hit so good. I really enjoyed this one. So yeah, solid 4 stars, would definitely recommend. All right, next up I had another audiobook ALC. So this is Adrift in Current, Clean and Clear by Shauna McGuire. This is part of their Wayward Children series, which is one of my favorite series of all time. I love it so much. And this one is, I want to say, book 10 in the series. Yes, this one is book 10, and it comes out in January. So I love this series to pieces, but of course with any series author, there's some that are going to be more hit and miss for me, and this one was sadly one of the misses for me, so I gave it 3 stars. I still love the series overall. I don't know if this book was particularly needed as part of the series, so I don't know, there is that. So this whole series is kind of like novellas, and they're portal fantasy, and they all connect, and sometimes you're in the real world, and sometimes you're in these portal fantasy worlds, and it's very much about finding the places that people are meant to be, and kind of very found family, and just all of those things. Like, it's just so good. A lot of LGBTQ plus themes in the entire series. I love them to pieces. They are just so good. So in here, we basically follow one of the characters that we met back during book 3, which was a long time ago, because this is book 10. So that character was kind of briefly mentioned and overviewed over there. So like, you've kind of already gotten maybe the conclusion of that character's story there, but in here we jump back to the time before when they were in their kind of drowned portal fantasy world that's under the sea, so to speak. And so it kind of goes from there. Like I said, it doesn't come out until January, so I don't want to give like too much away, and I enjoyed parts of it, but again, like for the sake of the entire series and this story in particular, I don't know if it was needed for the sake of the series. So yeah, 3 stars. I mean, they can't all be hits. So yeah, love the series overall though. All right, next up I read The Cinnamon Bun Bookstore by Lori Gilmore. This is the second book in her Dream Harbor series, which is very much like a cozy small town series. And this one I gave 4 stars to. I really enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed this one more than the first book in the series, which was The Pumpkin Spice Cafe, which was super blowing up. I feel like this entire series is super blowing up right now. And so yeah, this one I enjoyed, and I really love the like little cute maple leaves. See how they're like holographic on here? So stinking cute. So I'm so glad I grabbed a physical copy of this one as well, because like I said, I gave it 4 stars. Basically, in this one, the heroine works at a bookstore and somebody's kind of messing with books on the shelves. And so basically somebody's pulling out the books and kind of highlighting moments, annotating things, and leaving these like kind of scavenger hunt style of notes for her. So it's very much for the heroine to figure out. And then we follow the hero as well. And so he is very obsessed with the heroine, which I love that he fell first and is super into her. And he's a little bit younger. I want to say he's like 25-ish and she is 30. And so her being 30, turning 30 is very much a presence or a focus about the book as well. And just kind of that whole like figuring out what you're going to do and with your life and your friends and your family and all of those things. I really enjoyed it. These two were just so cute and fun together. The hero kind of steps in and decides to start helping her with these clues and like things that are happening in the bookstore, and it kind of goes from there. Really enjoyed this one. I'm very excited to now jump into the 3rd book in the series, which is a Christmas tree one. So yeah, this one 4 stars. All right, next up I jumped into a historical romance holiday Christmassy novella. So this is The Duke Who Despised Christmas by Scarlett Scott. I gave this one 4 stars. I loved it so much. I really enjoy Scarlett Scott's historical romances. If you haven't picked up her books, highly recommend. They're indie historical romances and they're just so good. She writes so many books as well. She has like a new book every single month in multiple different series, and she is just constantly writing and putting out books, which I love. So like I said, this one is holiday. It's Christmas themed. It's a historical romance. It has kind of enemies to lovers. It also has class difference. The hero in here is a duke and the heroine is his housekeeper. It has age gap. He's older. It has Beauty and the Beast vibes. The hero is scarred and it's just so good. The hero in this one as well is a widower, and so I will say it has some kind of heavy content in here with the hero of how he lost his pregnant wife many years ago on Christmas. And so that's kind of played out throughout the entire story. He thinks about that a lot. It's talked about a lot. That's how he got his scars. There was a fire. And so just know that it kind of mentions that a lot throughout the story. So it's kind of heavy, but basically in here, the heroine is the hero's new housekeeper, and she was hired by his mother to come and fix up his house, make it Christmassy, because he's very much anti that holiday, anti that season, anti-seeing people. So his mother is like, he needs a housekeeper and he especially needs somebody to kind of decorate his house for Christmas, because like, I'm coming there, I want it to be decked out. And so the heroine is there and decorating, and that's the first time that the hero meets her. He walks in and he sees all these like Christmas trees and wreaths and just like all Christmas decor, and he's like, what the heck is going on? Who is this girl? You're fired. And so she's like, actually you can't fire me because your mother hired me, and so she's my boss technically. And so it kind of goes from there with, at first he's very against the heroine, and then over time he's very pulled to her and starts to share things about his past and his life. And like I said, it has that like emotional depth and elements to the story, which I enjoyed. So yeah, a holiday historical romance that I did enjoy and recommend. So yeah, 4 stars for this one. All right, and then the last one that I read for November is Gifted to His Dad by Jay Wilder. I had to get back into some holiday novellas because there are so many that I want to get to this season. So this one is just so much fun, not gonna lie. The cover, the title, that's what definitely pulled me into this one. So this one I gave a 3.5/4 stars. It's a giving to his dad / stepdad kind of situation. So it's an MFM. And so basically the heroine in here is with the 2 guys, and one of which is the hero, her boyfriend, and the other guy, I guess he is a hero as well, and he is her boyfriend's stepdad. And so her boyfriend and stepdad have always wanted to kind of like share somebody and have them just be a part of their very like found family unit, which I will say in the blurb, it does say how the boyfriend and his stepdad, how they didn't come into each other's lives until the boyfriend was older, like he was a grown-up, he was an adult. And so just know that going in, so it's not like weird or anything. And it's just a fun time. Basically they end up spending the holidays together, and the heroine and her boyfriend, and he goes to his stepdad's house, and so her boyfriend basically wants to share her with his stepdad, and so it kind of goes from there. It's very quick and fun and spicy. It's just a fun time. So yeah, 3.5/4 stars. All right, so those were all 20 books that I ended up reading for the last half of November. Like I said, I read 42 books for the month, and you can see my mid-month wrap-up where I talked about the first 22 books I read for the first half of November. I have that linked in the description of the video as well if you want to go check out that video. Definitely let me know in the comments what books you ended up reading or loving in November. I would love to know. And if you want to leave me an emoji in the comments today to let me know that you watched this video, leave me the maple leaf emoji or the leaves, whatever you want to do, because of these really cute leaves on the Cinnamon Bun Bookstore book. So yeah, do that. Leave me like the maple leaf or the leaves emoji in the comments. And if you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!